Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Vasu. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to attend this event. This is our last virtual reading for Queer Country Crossroads. Before I really begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded and overlapping traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam nations. Just to introduce the book, Queer Country Crossroads is an anthology of nonfiction stories and poems written by and for rural 2S LGBTQIA plus folks. 50 writers, poets, and artists from across Canada share personal stories that explore themes from coming of age and isolation to community and home. Each person's story is unique. Some reflect on growing up in rural settings, while others describe their experiences of moving to the countryside later in life. Together, these voices offer diverse perspectives and insights into the strengths and hardships that come with living at the intersection of being rural and queer. Queer Country Crossroads serves as a beautiful reminder of people's resilience, love, and strength. We'll begin with an introduction by editor Mabe Kyle, followed by readings from contributors in Southwest Ontario. Mabe is a peer support specialist in practice and an expressive arts therapist in training. They are the co chair and co founder of Brant Pride, a queer community organization in the county of Brant, Ontario. They were selected as a community change maker by 880 Cities, a not for profit based in Toronto, and as a rural community change maker by the Ontario Rural Institute. In their personal work, Mabe Kyle uses poetry as a tool to express, collaborate, and educate. A poetry workshop at a national conference in Winnipeg. They published a Zine with art and writing from youth through the family's farm in Brant.
Thank you. Today is Wednesday, January 29th, and it is 4:38 a.m. I was not intending to write this at this time, but sometimes my body feels a calling to write, and I cannot get rid of that urge until the words inside me have been written on the page. I'm crying because I found out tonight that Blake died. Blake was someone dear to my heart and someone I could see parts of my. They were only 9 years old. They had a big heart, a beautiful soul, and a brilliant mind. Earlier at the transgender peer support group facilitated, there was discussion of ableism, transphobia, and sexual assault that the group attended had experienced earlier that week. I was having a difficult week. The 2025 Trump presidential inauguration had happened the week prior. My friend living in Detroit who had plans to visit me for my birthday in a few weeks would now be risking their safety if they were to travel across the border. In the eyes of their government, you do not exist as the gender marker on their identification is X. I was feeling exhausted, so I asked my partner if he'd come over for emotional support. On the drive there, I was listening to Andrea Gibson's poetry. The one about a friend from Detroit was playing. When I heard the line, I finally learned love is knowing everybody's name in the town of your reasons to run. I started crying and listened to the poem on repeat for the remainder of the drive. Once I reached my partner's place and was waiting for the elevator to come, I opened my Facebook to mindlessly scroll, and the post at the top of the page was Blake's obituary. I was in shock. I first met Blake virtually shortly after putting out a call for volunteers for the rural Ontario community of queer youth. Rocky was an organization that I co-founded in the summer of 2021 after participating in a research design roulette for gender and sexual minority youth who had accessed mental health care during the COVID-19 pandemic. We discussed different barriers to access that we experienced. One of the barriers that my group discussed was rural access to care. We were then tasked with coming up with a solution to this barrier, so our idea was a provincial-wide virtual peer support group for rural twist LGBTQI+ youth. After the research component was finished, we were encouraged by the research team to try and make our ideas come into reality. In the creation of Rocky, I wanted more folks on my team to be able to operate the organization. I recruited Blake, who was at the time a high school student in grade 11, and Nathan, an elementary school teacher. Together, they joined Bethany, Rachel, and myself in making Rocky come to life. Over the course of the following year, we put on a series of 6 virtual care and wellness workshops. Each workshop consisted of an hour-long guest speaker on a different topic, from spiritual care to gender-affirming care to harm reduction, and an hour of doing different social interactive activities such as poetry, art, or playing games. Blake had a number of connections in the community from attending queer camps during the previous summers and was able to suggest different people for us to invite. We had a lot of laughs together, especially when we played Gartic Phone. We'd howl with laughter until our abs hurt. We created a zine as a culminating project titled Queer Country Crossroads. We had less submissions for the zine than we wanted, so though Blake had asked a number of their friends to make submissions, who then sent us some of their art and writing. Blake was dedicated, hardworking, and always doing what they could to support the group while also being a student, working a couple of jobs, and remaining involved in other school and community activities. In a CBC News article about the zine that we had created, Blake was interviewed and quoted, "I think one of the big things is to remind ourselves that we're not alone," said Quinlan. Rural youth, we often feel so isolated and so far separated from community, and it's a different experience than city living even. And to see ourselves represented in art and in experience and in the eyes of other queer youth is really important for me. They were also interviewed along with me by Shauna Ray for a half-hour podcast special for her podcast series Clearing a New Path in June of 2022. In it, we talked about many different things, including protective factors regarding trans suicide rates and rural living. I was talking to Shauna last night and she'd re-listened to our episode after hearing the news. She let me know Blake mentioned being inspired by me in the episode. Blake, you inspired me so much too, especially your authenticity and pride in your queer and trans identities at such a young age. You gave me hope and reassurance that the future held so much potential. You reminded me of the value of community. Your art and the poetry you shared conceptualized the beauty of diversity and nuance. Although the work we did together dwindled a bit from there, I had the pleasure of meeting Blake in person for the first time the following summer. I was going on road trips across the province interviewing rural to us LGBTQIA plus folks. They offered to be one of my interviewees. We talked for 3 hours together in a park by a lake in Huntsville, their hometown. It was a beautiful day and a very enriching discussion. In summer 2023, I also participated in the Nowly Press Starts collab program for youth to come up with different solutions to different initiatives to combat the mental health crisis in Canada. There was some grant funding that would be given to different people's ideas if they were chosen. My idea for a project to take on was the creation of this book, for people to share stories of their lived experiences being twist LGBTQI plus in rural communities. Blake submitted a poem to this anthology about their love for the forest that raised them. Their submission brought me joy reading about their relationship with the land in their rural community. 5 years ago, I moved home to the town of my reasons to run when the pandemic began. I was living abroad at the time and had been living abroad or in Toronto for 5 of the previous 7 years. I moved home to the town that bullied me as a child for being gender nonconforming to the point that I closeted and masked who I was for over a decade. The town that convinced me that there were no other queer or trans people around. The town that made me believe that if I wanted to be accepted or have a sense of community or belonging, I needed to live in a metropolitan city. Living in a metropolitan city and abroad in many different countries only made me realize that my heart longed to be in the countryside, that 2S LGBTQI plus people have indeed existed in every human culture since the beginning, and that I was not alone in being a rural queer and trans person. However, throughout this process, I came to realize that if I was feeling isolated, then I must not be alone, and that there were other youth and rural communities feeling similarly. This is why I started Rocky and created this anthology. This is why I started the Pride organization in my community, hosting events in every ward of the municipality over the span of 5 months. Because whether the government likes it or not, we do exist everywhere and will continue to exist everywhere every day of the year. 5 years ago, when I moved back to my parents' farm, I was not expecting to stay home for the next 5 years. I was not expecting to feel so at home that when I proudly show my friends from the city around my town, they comment on how I know everybody's name. I was not expecting to meet and become friends with incredible people from across the province. People who are trans and neurodivergent and rural. People like my partner who I can dream of building a future in the countryside with. People like Bethany who taught me the strength and resilience that people are able to have through her journey of being a Black trans woman and refugee arriving in Canada, to experiencing homelessness and a breakup while in recovery from surgery this past summer. People like Riley who inspired me to start the Pride organization in my hometown after attending the one they put on and feeling so welcome and at home. People like me, people like Blake. As queer and trans people, the statistics are often not in our favor. We know what suicidal ideation, violence, and oppression are all too well. As rural people, we often experience higher rates of isolation and lack of resources and support. Living at the intersection of these identities comes with unique barriers altogether. There are often more conservative environments. There's often a much smaller dating pool to choose from. And you often need to drive over an hour into a city to access gender affirming healthcare or attend to LGBTQIA plus groups or events. However, the statistics are not only statistics, they are lives and they are stories. Stories that deserve being told and stories that are worth being heard. Stories of how we grew up, stories of the love in our lives in all forms, sometimes found in the most unexpected of places or people, love of friends, family, partners, and the environment around us, stories of pain and isolation, stories of resilience and community, stories of home. It has been my pleasure to read through the stories in this anthology, stories that gave me chills, tears, and made me laugh. Reading them has given me a sense of hope and a feeling of belonging during this period of grief and rage that I'm going through. I feel the power of sharing stories is an act of resistance. The power of stories is in healing both parts of the writer and reader, to feel less isolated in whatever one might be experiencing, to feel seen in one's depths of joy and suffering. It is an opportunity for folks to learn more about the world beyond themselves if they are so willing. As Thomas King once said, the truth about stories is that's all we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Mabe, and thank you for all the work that you've done to bring this anthology together. Our first reading will be from Lauren Drive. Lauren has spent their whole life in a small town, growing up around farms. They are familiar with losing a boot to deep mud and the itch of getting hay down your shirt while moving bales. An amateur poet, they enjoy using poetry to explore their feelings and experiences connected to living in an area that they love so much but which often leaves them feeling isolated.
Um, Hello. This poem is called Divergence, What Could Have Been. Every 6 months, I move to Toronto. The queer friends I make live within walking distance of my apartment. My barber gets my haircut right and doesn't question my pronouns. Every weekend, I choose an activity from a list of queer community events and go out. There's a little bit of everything: drag nights, book readings, mutual aid. Most of them are within walking distance of my apartment. Sometimes I take transit. I go out to gay clubs. There's one down the street. The friends that live in my apartment get ready at my sorry. The friends that live in my neighborhood get ready at my apartment. Dance music makes my body vibrate. I shine with sweat and glitter. Standing in the club bathroom, I look up. I stare at myself in the mirror, toothbrush hanging from my mouth. I have just driven 6 hours round trip to see my queer friends, to have something like community. I have never lived in Toronto. Through the open window in my bathroom, frogs and crickets sing. Coyote howls replace sirens. I'm so tired, I tell my mother. I want community here, not 3 hours away. She smiles, sad. Tells me that maybe it's a sign. I should start something. I smile back, fake. Agreement is easier than telling her I resent that. I don't want to have to be that person. The first. I know I can. I know I should. Just once, I want to have to choose between three events happening on the same night instead of between driving 6 hours or a decent night's sleep.
Thanks, Lauren. Our, our next reading will be from Jeffrey Dale. Jeffrey is a minister, playwright, theatre practitioner, author, and community educator. Jeffrey was raised in Milverton, Ontario, where they developed a love for figure skating, playing piano, and theatre. Jeffrey has produced over 20 plays written for literary journals and magazines. Today, Jeffrey holds a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the University of Guelph and a Master of Divinity from Emmanuel College. Jeffrey is the minister at College Street United Church in downtown Toronto and began a PhD in human relationships at Martin Luther University in the fall of 2024.
There we go. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. Before I read, I just want to say a huge thank you to Mabe for putting this call out. Even though I have a master's in creative writing, I must admit there was many years where I felt as though my writing didn't deserve to be heard. And when friends of mine were sending me Mabe's Facebook post about this, I thought, well, why not try? And what you've done for me, Mabe, is quite amazing. You've really given me back my voice in my writing. And even as a 40-year-old, I can't believe I'm saying that, as you know in the story, as an old person in some ways. I am so grateful for what you have done for each and every one of the authors in this story and the voice that you have allowed to be lifted out. And I will even say the book was advertised in the Literary Review of Canada this month as part of a group of books. And I never thought in a million years something that I wrote would be in a magazine like that I have read so diligently for years. And so I was giddy and excited, and I'm just so grateful that you did this. I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs of my story. The story is titled A Spartan, a Gladiator, a Knight, Milverton's Boy Figure Skater. A boy figure skater? That's what I heard. He's starting this year. It's just weird. While lacing up my figure skates for the first time, I listened as two moms decided to add their commentary to my next adventure, figure skating. I was the first boy, at least in recent memory, who left the world of hockey to enter into the sphere of figure skating. In Milverton, boys learn to skate with figure skaters as a way to quickly transition to hockey. I decided to do the opposite, or at least return to figure skating. It wasn't normal. For boys in a town like Milverton, hockey had reigned for generations as the sport of choice. Hockey is the ultimate status symbol. If you're a hockey player, you're someone, especially if you played rep or representative hockey. If this were ancient Greece, they are Spartans, or ancient Rome, the gladiators, or even medieval England, the knights. In short, hockey players are to be recognized, revered, and respected. Here I was, leaving that world for another. I was entering puberty amongst my feelings of being different or unique or odd, common words bandied about in my childhood. I was also feeling restless, strangely independent, and ready to start my life. If you ask my mom, she'd say, Jeff moves to the beat of his own drum. Stepping onto the ice for the first time with toe picks instead of a toe box, a high boot instead of a tendon guard, was like a baby deer taking its first steps, wobbly yet natural. My family maybe thought, like many other things I had tried in life, this too was just a phase. Instead of going out and buying new skates, a tradition I had since I had laced up my first skates, I was crammed into my oldest sister's figure skates with black covers that my mom made at her sewing machine. When the steel hit the ice, I sojourned into a new figure of who I would become, separating who I was from who I was expected to be in a town of 1,200 people. For better or worse, I became known as the boy figure skater. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Our next reading will be from Happy Misha Edwards. Happy is an Ontario community changemaker, soundscape artist, and filmmaker. Through voice acting, live performance, and immersive soundscape storytelling installations, they breathe new life into oral traditions. As community manager at Reset, Misha facilitates rest and reset experiences that center care, connection, and collective well being. They're also the founder of the Happy Collective, which hosts Jewels of Jamaica, an honoring ceremony, fellowship, and luncheon dedicated to uplifting the mental well being of queer Afro Caribbean Canadian communities.
Hi everyone. Thank you for that the reading so far, and thank you for that beautiful description of who I am. I don't know who that person is really. Those are true, but I don't really know who that person is. I'm grateful to be reading tonight. Thank you, Mabe, for including my piece in the anthology. And I will be speaking about rural Jamaica, where I was born a long time
Happy,
ago.
sorry, 1 second. Am I the only one who can barely hear them? Yeah, can you bring yourself closer to the mic or to your phone? Because you can't really be heard.
Can you hear me now?
Not really. It's really low.
Okay, let me try.
Do you maybe have like earbuds or something that might be like
Yeah.
next to you? Because it sounds like you're like the microphone's close, but kind of
I
like.
think it was there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
much
this
better.
is better. This works. Yeah.
It was on the speaker. Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, my friends are here. Hey, thanks for letting me know you couldn't hear me. I was saying, thanks, Mabe, for including me in this anthology. And the story or the piece that I'm about to read um, was written about my experience in rural Jamaica, where the Hurricane Melissa um, really impacted the whole island. However, the western part, which is where I'm from, Westmoreland, close to St. Elizabeth as well, close to Negril. If and there's any tourist here who has ever been to Jamaica, it's close to a tourist destination for many Canadians and North Americans and Europeans. And I really do hope that if you haven't heard anything about how folks have been impacted, check it out and see what's going on, and know that this story is coming from one of those people who used to live there. And I just visited for my birthday this year again, and it was beautiful, but now it's completely shifted the landscape and people's situation. This piece is called Desires of a Barefoot Country Boy by Happy Micah Edwards. Barefoot country boy, swaying on their backs, soothing their spirits to a rhythm like an orgasm. We call it love. Yet the symbols we use to form the shape of our hearts is maybe outdated or points to a new perspective. Leaves, like medicine, form the shape we use for the heart. Food from leaves is what we use to fill our starving stomachs. The fear filling the void of the future. I cannot see beyond the thoughts of death, terrorizing my mind. I do not like it, my mind. It does wrong. This I cannot understand. It says things I shouldn't say. I think things I know I should not be thinking. And then, dot, dot, dot. I tasted on my tongue. What is it you taste, my barefoot country boy? Desire. It's sweet and delicious desire, thy Lord. Like mango juice dripping down this country boy's hand. It runs like a river to nowhere or to its doom. I fear my mind. Sometimes I want to hit my head hard on the wall just to, just to fix the brokenness a little bit. But hitting my head hard against the concrete walls of my house hasn't given me any reward. It did give me more physical pain to distract from the forever stabbing sensations in my brain. A battle my body trembles to at night, as a teenage barefoot country boy, intoxicated with desire for the wrong kind of love. The love that frightens the fuck out of your miserable grandmother's ghost, but compelling enough to touch, to taste, to thrill the threat of death, of being caught, found out. What a terrifying thought. It breaks my heart. The passion so intense pulled me and him into the abandoned house close to the crossroads at the break of dusk. And my body pulsates with lust, love, like. Did I even like him? I really did not know him, except that he was a bit weird and had strange colored skin. And I knew, because I saw with my own two 15-year-old eyes, one boy on his knee and the other boy's body in his mouth, and him receiving pleasure underneath the big bushes, underneath the island midday sun, underneath the law of boogery on the land. The barefoot country boy swallowed the scene and the risk of survival. The scent of lust captivated him, and the thought of punishment from God poisoned the possibility. So when the boy on his knees, sucking so seductively, reached to grab for me to join in, my body didn't lie that day, but my mind, too strong, said this is wrong, and it is toxic, and it told me, if I stepped any further into that big bush and participated in the sodomy, God is not afraid to burn big bushes with countryside batty boys underneath it, and I knew my luck with punishment. So I left. I went home to eat a Julie mango, but that mango wasn't just any mango. I did not know one boy could do that to another boy, and my country boy's mind has been mango blown. I sucked on that Julie mango that day until the seed was white, thinking about what else is possible with that boy who was receiving the mango sucking. We did not kiss. Kissing is for gays, and we were not that. We are Jamaican country boys. These two things don't mix. It is like trying to mix oil and water. Immiscible, unmixable, incompatible, keep separated. In the dark room, grinding intensely on each other, I felt him. He's ready. It felt intuitive since I was always teased as being too much like a girl, so it felt normal to take what I thought of as the girl position. So I turned to face the wall for him to enter my portal from behind, as seen many times on porn or peeking through boarded house cracks with my friends to watch Dupa have sex with random women. He tried to enter, but my mind panicked and pressed from the threats of punishment. Remember what the people in the district said? Once you allow somebody in your body, you gon' drown when you go river. It did not go into my body that night. Believe me, we tried. But not deterred, we shifted positions. I spat on my fingers and placed the wet on his hole. He did not refuse. I learned that from porn and the big boys talking their big man talk. I tried to enter. It did not enter. Teenage country boys in heat, not knowing what their bodies be doing this close together and how it felt so wrong, but natural. I spat some more wet. I tried to enter again. He breathed in deep, and I enter his portal, naturally, with the strokes of an abashed, unworrying ramping shop. 45 seconds until I exploded with the intensity I still seek through porn and masturbation. I have had one romping shop with one girl before, and I think she was a third distant cousin. Well, welcome to the complexities of existing in the rural countryside of the island. But I felt like I truly lost my virginity in that abandoned concrete upstairs house by the crossroads that night. Romping shop with the strange boy. I did not know if I liked him. We did not kiss. I felt both absolutely turned on and terrified at the same fucking time. He pulled me in for his turn to try to enter my portal, but it was completely closed. So he taught me about the pleasure of rubbing the body between the thighs. And it worked. I was turned on again. Teenage hormones, raging desires, the thrill of this defiance, the breaking of the rules, the way we knew things we were not supposed to know or do. I felt liberated, like riding a bicycle without falling and without hands for the first time. We finished with a primal orgasm. I remember it feeling strange, but natural. I have never seen this way of romping shop in porn before. Maybe this is how country boys do romping shop. We pulled our shorts up, looked around in the dark, as the terrifying thoughts seared through my mind to my skull. What have I done? But why does it feel so fucking good? As we exit the house to grab my bicycle, this other country boy from the district saw us and asked, "Why unu a come out of the abandoned house together?" I wish I said, "'Cause we went in together." But instead, I lied. Because that's what we barefoot country boys do. We lie. But the body tells the truth. And my teenage desire was touched. And I was ready for more intense adventures, risking it to touch this strange country boy's body. I'm done.
Thanks, Abby. That was great. Our next reading will be from Gio Laforme. Gio is a trans Ojibwe writer and filmmaker from New Credit Native Reservation. Currently based in Toronto, his goal, other than to befriend all the bugs in the city, is to make stories that warm your heart but make your skin crawl. A Toronto Film School survivor, you can find his work in places such as Little Ghosts Books and Moss Puppy's number 7 issue.
Ani Dishnikachio. Hi, it's amazing to see you all here online. I'm going to be reading a short story I wrote. It's called Crayola Bones. It's based on it. It is my attempt of writing my own story that I grew up being told a lot of stories and folk tales, and this is my own little modern native boys attempt at one. So I hope you all enjoy. I have always been fascinated by mythology, from my own Turtle Island to Greek mythology, Sisyphus and his rock. I remember being a little boy, seeing my brothers run onto the ice with their hockey sticks, and me, under my blanket with my flashlight, reading about Zeus, turning his soon-to-be mother of his child into a fly and eating her. Gross, yet kind of cool. I wanted to be there, you know, when all of these fantastical things happen to people. I wandered through the woods looking for coyotes, and one time, hoping I would fall for one of his tricks just for the fun of it. A rabies shot and a lashing from my granddad later, it didn't seem so fun. My head was always in the sky. My granddad would tell my mom when she came to visit. He had no idea how much I wish that was true. I was about 10. I was headed for school, throwing my mucks on, following my brothers out the door to catch the bus for school. They were ahead of me, yelling at me to catch up as they raced down the driveway. They always made it down faster. Connor was 3 years older than me, while Omar raced ahead almost 6. They challenged me day after day. Knowing this seemed cruel, still I trudged on, the snow slowing my short stature down. Then I heard it. I almost mistook it for the wind, that subtle humming in my ear, like a mosquito in December. I was caught off guard. Psst. My head turned to the woods. Something in my subconscious knew that's where the sound came from. The crunching of my mucks in the snow halted as I ached to hear the noise again. Come here. I took a step forward towards the woods. It was calling to me. It wanted me there, a legend of my very own, until I felt the coldness hit the back of my neck. Hey, hurry up there, you're going to miss the bus. I turned. My brother had been calling to me. Of course he was. The snow crunched as I made my way up the bus and hopped on. I went to my seat, staring out the window. I kicked myself for daydreaming again. As I stared, I could have sworn I saw a flash of red in the trees. The snow turned to the scritching of pencils as I wrote down my lines in my Ojibwe language course, naming the animals and writing them down, using them in a sentence. My mind remembers stories with them as core characters. Josh was the local elder and my language teacher. My friends always chuckled about how his name was Josh and nothing fantastical like our non-native friends insinuated. He was one of the few that indulged in my daydreaming. I had the heart of a storyteller, he used to say. I just had to remember that stories end, and I never knew what that part meant. I sat and thought about all the stories that included all the stories that included horses, from Poseidon creating them to Sleipnir riding across the Bifrost. Psst. My heart jumped. I turned expecting to see my friend, his mocking face ready to pelt me with crumpled up paper. I was surprised to see nothing. Heads were down, scribbling at their work. I tried to keep my eyes down, wondering if it was all in my head before I heard it again. Psst, over here, Flatfoot. I turned my head up to the sound when I heard it again. I saw a red fox, head peeking up like a bud through the snow and looking at me through the window. I knew it was him somehow, in a way that I still cannot explain. What do you want? I spit. Like the fact of Fox speaking to me through my class window was almost a normal thing occurring that day. You're going to get me in trouble. Trouble? I don't spread trouble, only good news. Come out here and see. My foot thumped excitedly. This was my moment for a fantabulous adventure like the stories I had read about. I looked between the creature and my teacher before my hand shot up. Yes, Pat? My teacher asked. I need to go to the bathroom. It was the only lie my 10-year-old mind could come up with. He nodded, half paying attention, as he looked back down at his laptop. Thank God he wasn't paying too much attention to notice me grab my coat and mitts before running out the door. I darted through the hallways, rushing towards the exit. My face was burning against the cold. I'd forgotten my scarf. I saw him darting into the woods, the red of his fur trailing into the thicket of trees, leaving a path for me to follow in the snow. I followed, my hair mingling with those few still surviving leaves falling from the trees and landing on top of the snow. We raced. I could hear him yelp at me to keep up and not stop. My little lungs were pushing through. We went off the path that I remembered, further in the woods, up the hills that only the adults trekked. My mittens pawed at the rocks peeking up out of the snow, pulling my weight up the hill. By the time I got to the top, I am exhausted. I am panting, and I am looking down at Turtle Point with the fox next to me, peering down as well. We're far up, I exclaimed. We are. Would you like to keep going? He asked. I looked over at him quizzically. How? Grow wings. He spoke like it was the most obvious solution. I plopped down in the snow, watching as the fox shed his skin, almost like a tight-fitting parka, before revealing his true form. A large, beautiful bird like nothing I had ever seen, dark as night, feathers like tar bleeding on the snow, watching me with a seemingly knowing grin. I don't think I can do that. Of course you can, the bird exclaimed. He opened his wings as tools fell out with packs and packs of crayons and a lighter, wax and feathers, just like Icarus. So I sat in the snow, my little fingers working digitally. I burned at the crayons, watching as they turned to malleable putty in my hands. Like new flesh, I started welding it to my skin like an old car. It didn't even hurt. I don't know why my granddad always kept me away from lighters. This was easy. The flick and the warm life between my chubby fingertips were addictive. I felt transformed, feathers peeking out from my skin. I looked like the dancers I would watch, spinning and powerful and free. I looked off the cliffside at the trees separating the blue from the skies, to the browns of the naked trees below, keeping that forbidden light baby blue from us all. I wanted to fly between them, spin so hard the colors intertwined into my own color, all for me. I spread my arms out, showing off my new wings to the large, magnificent bird in front of me. There's just one more step, the bird explained, his large form backed up off the cliff, his wings outstretched and waiting for me. I looked over, excited, almost stamping my feet. What is it? I asked. Fly. I peered off the cliff. It seemed so high up, I wasn't sure if I could. The bird peered down at me, his smile bright and warm. I know you can do it. I've seen your kind do it countless times. Just close your eyes, flap your wings, and leap. He noticed my hesitation. Trust me. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Good. I took a step forward. I felt my senses get lighter. The sound of snow under my weight seemed to disappear. I felt like I was floating. I felt his wings, not my hands, lifting me by the waist. I felt changed. I felt beautiful. Now fly. And I flew. Miigwech, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gio. Our final reading will be from Thielen Van Dyke. Thielen, once a street-preaching conservative who stood for traditional marriage, is a queer, trans, anti-capitalist, and a proud wife and mother from Southern Ontario. She's an ADHD-riddled nerd who found her greatest loves in her wife, her two daughters, and in herself. She works in IT, enjoys creating with whatever she can use, and finds great peace as a queer apostate. Her wife, Fred, has told her she needs to write more, but lacks the ability to finish projects. She likes to write songs in her car and has been described by Fred as the only good thing to come from the apps.
Hello, thank you. Like Jeffrey, I would just like to, again, thank Mabe for organizing all of this. I also didn't ever think when I wrote this like 3 years ago that this would ever get published or that we would ever be an opportunity to say that I'm a published writer, which is very cool. So thank you again. And yeah, I'm like 1 for 2 of getting through this without crying, so I hope I can do that today. But thank you again. My essay is called Unloving Yourself. I feel like self-love is one of those nebulous things that is attempted to be taught, but is only really learned through practice and effort. Your view of who you are and how good of a person you are is rarely a conscious choice. It's a subconscious inevitability to judge who you are based on the values you are given and have grown into, but it's a conscious effort to challenge those values, to test them, and to prove them. For so many of us, that means we don't get off to a good start. Imagine being trans or queer in a conservative or religious home. You're surrounded by messages and ideas that who you are is fundamentally broken, and you need the saving powers of a God in order to fix you. That's how broken you are. Only a God can fix you. And as you grow, you begin to realize and know in your heart that, oh shit, I'm queer, or oh shit, I'm trans, if you even know the words for these feelings. You don't see that as a revelation of who you are. You see it as a poison, a sickness, because that's all you've heard. And they expect you to sing Jesus Loves Me in Sunday school. But they don't know you like you know you. You know you're broken. You're just keeping it hidden now. I have done literal street preaching before. Have you done that? It's a core memory of how utterly lost I was. I stood on the street yelling about the lies of evolution and accosting people about whether or not they knew Jesus. The sheer audacity. It's funny to look back because I remember feeling just so damn smart. As if the kid who struggled with same-sex attraction and looking up how much soy I'd have to eat to grow tits had all the answers for salvation. Honestly, I don't fully remember what I was thinking. I'm quite sure I just used my religious zeal as another way to disassociate from myself and my problems. If I wasn't playing video games, working, at school, or being a bigot, I was sitting there hating myself. How could I not? What in my life taught me that being myself was okay? Everything I was feeling was a big red flag for going to hell because that's what I was taught. That's what I grew up hearing. Not to say that my parents and family were out and proud bigots. Not in the God hates fags sort of way. It was the little things. Someone gay on TV, I'd hear the sounds of disgust and frustration as if their very existence was an offense. I remember my dog, Rue, died. We had put him down, and we had him for years. He was a Samoyed, a beautiful, white, fluffy ball of loyalty and friendship, and every one of us cried when he gently closed his eyes at the vet's office. I loved that dog. We kept his old collar hanging by a hook by the front door. It was a choke chain, really, because Samoyeds pull like crazy when you take him out for a walk. One day I was missing him, and being my angsty teen self, I took the choke chain and I put it around my scrawny neck. It was comically large and likely looked very silly. I didn't care. I loved and missed my dog, and I wanted to express that in a way that felt meaningful to me. And then my dad saw me. I'll never forget the look of disgust and anger on his face. "What are you wearing? What is that?" He stomped over to me and took it off by force. "No, we don't wear stuff like that. Do you know who wears stuff like this? Men leading other men around by collars? Disgusting. No, we don't do that." The choke chain was promptly hung back up by the door, and that was the end of that discussion. I was so confused. I just loved and missed my dog. There was nothing inherently sexual about me wearing the choke chain. And yet here I was being told that kink and homosexuality are the same. They aren't. And that both are explicitly wrong. They aren't. Neither my mom or dad would ever say a bad word to someone for being gay. Yet all the noises, actions, and words behind closed doors signaled to me that while they may not have outright hated them, they certainly didn't think that it was okay. Not okay, and certainly not to be celebrated. Combine this with Sunday schools and sermons and devotions and other like-minded people in your life who all publicly profess their same disdain, openly or between the lines, for people who felt like I felt. So how could I love who I was? How else could I see myself as anything other than broken? And for a long time I wondered how anyone could ever love me if they really knew me. Gabrielle changed that. Not right away, mind you. This wasn't some epiphany I had while we were dating or standing at the altar to get married. It was a long, slow, steady process where I learned, little by little, that this woman loves me for who I am. It took a while. I remember standing by the river that runs behind her parents' house. I had the engagement ring in my hand, and I knew I was going to ask her to marry me. She knew it was coming eventually. We knew that we were going to get married after 3 months of dating. Though her father insisted we be dating for a year before we make any plans. It was 10 months later, and we had discussed it at length, and I had asked her father if he was okay with me asking a little bit early. He was. So there I was, ring in hand, hand in pocket, waiting for the right moment. And I turned to her and I said, "I love you." And she said, "I love you too." And I said, "Are you sure?" Even then, knowing full well what we had discussed, she was on board. And that she was on board and that she had just said she loved me to my face, I had to ask, "Are you sure?" Who does that? In my case, it was the insecurity of a person who didn't love themselves. And it didn't stop there. Every time I told her I loved her, which was often, she always said it back, and I too often asked if she was sure. This is what it can look like when you're told directly or indirectly from the beginning that you're broken, that you're sinful, and that only God can fix you. Only He never does. There was no escaping how I felt. There was no amount of prayer and piety I could immerse myself in that would take away what I felt. I had no hope in myself. And so it poisoned my relationship. I assumed people didn't want to be around me, so I never kept in touch with people when life moved us apart. And I could scarcely believe the woman who agreed to marry me when she said, "I love you." I didn't just not love myself, I hated myself. Complete and total loathing. I had prayed, I had hoped, I had distracted myself with video games, I'd poured myself into my marriage and then eventually being a parent. And I couldn't shake this idea that I was a liar, that I was broken, that I was a bad person. When I finally realized I may be trans, I went to my first therapy session. I sat down and looked at my therapist, and I said, "I'm human garbage. I'll never forget the look of complete confusion on her face. "Why would you say that?" she asked me. And at the time I didn't know. All I could do was shrug, and then burst into tears. It gets better, I promise. All of these feelings came to a head, their lowest and darkest point, as Gabrielle and I sat down and discussed whether or not our marriage could survive me transitioning. I can tell you I have never cried so hard in my life. As far as I could tell, my life was crumbling around me and everything I loved was going to be lost. We were married 11 years at that point, and it was a terrifying conversation to have because I was, and am, wildly and completely in love with Gabrielle. And here the reality facing me was this may not work. And then what? What would life be without her? What would I be? To put this in a bit more perspective, there's some people you meet who, after you meet them, you forget what life is like before they entered it. This is Gabrielle to me. It's like the scene in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy steps from her ruined little shack of a house and into the bright, colorful, vibrant world of Oz. I had finally stopped living in black and white and started seeing color because of her. And here we were talking about it all potentially coming to an end. I remember physically pushing away at the air in front of me as if the feelings of dysphoria could be kept at bay by force, as I kept saying, "I won't do it, I won't do it." If it meant losing her, I would find a way to live with it. I didn't care if it hurt me. I didn't care if I was miserable because I didn't care about me. I hated me. But I loved Gabrielle, and losing her would be cutting away one of the few anchors I have to this world. I was willing to throw my mental health, my very being, under the bus, as long as she stayed. Resigned in my decision, I could only stare at the ground and weep for what I had lost and what I could lose. As I felt Gabrielle's hands on my shoulders, she was in front of me. But I couldn't dare look at her. "Hey." She has this voice she uses when she's being deadly serious but also kind. It's a very motherly voice, and I've heard it a few times, and every time it stirs my heart, and it reaches my very soul. She used it this time. "Hey, look at me." And I looked at her. How could I not? She used the voice. And so the next words she spoke, and I want to underline that I firmly believe this. These words saved my life. "If you don't do this, this marriage will be over." Anyone who has come out can likely tell you about someone who felt hurt by it. A parent, a sibling, a loved one, a friend, someone felt like the fact that you came out was a big deal to them. It changes things. It's hard for them to take in. They have to figure out how to adjust to this new information. You feel a bit guilty because you're just trying to be happy, and for some reason, that is a problem for them. Like you're being selfish somehow. And with Gabrielle's words, she showed me that not only was it okay for me to put myself first, to try to take some semblance of a step to finally loving who I am, this time it was necessary. I wouldn't have made it if I tried to push it down. I promise you that. She knew that I would be consumed by resentment or self-loathing, and it would have led me to a place that people don't walk away from lightly, if at all. But even if I didn't love me at the time, she did. I wish I could say it was a moment where I wiped tears from my eyes and I stood tall and I raised a fist in defiance and there was thunder and lightning and some divine mandate made itself known to me. Unfortunately, moments like that are only seen for how pivotal they are far after they happen. Gabrielle saved my life, and I took my first tentative step in trying to accept and love myself for who I am. It was a big deal, but at that moment I just cried while we held each other. And so here I am today, and that is where the process began, to unlearn all the things that I had learned that taught me indirectly to hate myself. Therapy has helped immensely, and one of the things I've learned when an intrusive thought creeps in is to ask yourself, why? Why am I broken? What makes me bad? Why am I human garbage? And it takes time. But you pick away at the defenses you've put around yourself and that others had inadvertently put there for you, until you finally see the light from within this cocoon of self-hatred. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm gay and that's bad, or I'm trans and that's bad, why? Why is that bad? Who are you hurting? What are you taking away from others? Whose life are you affecting by being gay or trans or both? As I stepped through each question, I realized I was torturing myself for a religion and for people who would sooner see me miserable and dead then be happy as myself. Consider that for a moment. There are people who claim that God loves you, but it would be better if you were dead than if you were trans or gay. Not all will say it like that, of course. They'll say you need to pray and repent, but for far too many, death is the inevitable consequence, and they'll have you pay that price over just being happy as who you are. In the end, I've come to the conclusion that the only people who are upset about my being gay and trans are people who would never meet me, who don't know me, who don't love me, and who aren't worth the time to think about. I've had to unlearn the idea that turning the other cheek meant throwing myself into the fire, and that being the bigger person meant enduring hateful comments and toxic relationships. I don't subscribe to the idea that someone else's faith means anything to me in an authoritative way. If God hates me, then that's between me and her. I can exist, I can be me, and if anyone has a problem with it, they're the ones who could die mad about it, not me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dylan. That was really moving. I don't think Alec has joined the stage, but I'm just going to introduce him anyway. His work is featured, his art is featured in the book. So Alec Rod is a trans, queer, autistic teen artist. He draws to express his thoughts and to better understand and process the world around him. He also creates inclusive and diverse hand-drawn cards, pins, and odd bits and bobs. Alec is the creator of the artwork on pages 3 and 14. He can be found at stray mossballs or _mossballs on Instagram. Oh, thanks, Mabe. Okay. So thanks everybody who's taken the time to be here, and to all the contributors for sharing their stories with us. And I'm just going to put a link to the website. Oh, Mabe, I didn't see your message until now, but yeah, if you'd like to read Blake's poem right now, you can. Should I read Blake's bio, or do you just want to go?
Yeah, you can read Blake's bio.
Yeah, okay. 1 second. Blake Quinlan is whose memory this anthology is dedicated to. Blake was a very passionate person dedicated to building community for those around them, and worked hard with the rural Ontario community of queer youth to put on a series of care and wellness workshops and publish a zine of art and writing from rural to SLGBTQIA+ youth from across the province, a number of whom were their friends. They were an incredible artist and active, working with theatre production in their hometown of Huntsville, Ontario. They were in their first year of studying theatre production at Toronto Metropolitan University. Their piece in this anthology is about their love of the forest, and it relates to embracing uniqueness and diversity. In a text message, they said, "It's really just a silly little poem, TBH." Blake passed away on January 22nd, 2025. They were 19 years of age at the time. Although Blake did not submit a bio with their piece of writing for this anthology, a previous bio that they sent a few years ago for other projects Mape was working on together is as follows. Blake Quinlan is an agender queer from Muskoka, Ontario. As a 16-year-old high school student, they are quite familiar with many issues rural to SLGBTQIA+ youth face. In their free time, Blake loves to cook, make art, read poetry, and play way too much Stardew Valley.
Thank you. A letter to the forest that raised me. To your sturdy trunks, ever tall and reaching. To your soft, muddy floor, kicking my feet as I wander along your untrodden paths. To your cold, mossy rocks that I perch myself upon, watching the life that flows through you. To your endless songs and melodies. To all my friends living amongst you, and all the mysteries that you hold. I thank you, my oldest, dearest friend, for holding me in your loving embrace, letting me lose myself in my books, for teaching me the power of versatility with your perpetual ebb and flow, for showing me the beauty and diversity to love all that which makes me special. I will miss you when I'm gone. I hope we meet again soon.
Thank you, Mabe. I think that's it for today. Thanks everybody for making the time, and thanks all the contributors for sharing your stories and reading for us today. That was really great. I've put a link to the book in the description in the chat in case anyone wants a copy right now. If you don't want to buy it online, check out your nearest independent bookstore. We prefer that over anything else. Okay, thank you. This is the final virtual reading, but thank you all for supporting this. Thanks. Good night. Bye.
Miigwech.